Hello again. So let's just recap. When I gave birth in 1970, 95% of us labored and had a vaginal birth. The vast majority of us, for a 20-year period, used some level of breathing and relaxation skills, with our husbands being active birth coaches. And we did that around all the assessments, monitoring procedures of the evidence-based practice at that time. We reduced suffering, and obstetricians and obstetrical nurses loved working with us. Was that a natural birth? That's the question. What does natural birth mean? I gave birth last in 1982. Now remember, birthing better families were developing skills. In the 70s, we developed skills only around breathing, touch, and communication, because 95% of us labored and had a vaginal birth. But something changed in the late 70s and the 80s. What were those changes? They were phenomenal. First, we started to wear bikinis. None of us wanted to be left with an ugly scarf. We had to have a cesarean. We wanted to wear bikinis. We wanted to be awake in a cesarean. We wanted our partners to be with us. And we wanted to be able to try for a VBAC if we had one. So we put pressure on the medical community, and they came up with a bikini cut. They didn't develop that out of nowhere. It was pressure from us as consumers to change how cesareans were done. It made it safer to have a VBAC. We could be awake. Our husband could be with us. And what else happened at that time? Feminism. Women wanted to get out of the house and get to work. What else happened? Birth control. 1970, you couldn't get birth control except for a diaphragm or a rubber. But the pill became available, and we reduced our family size. And what did that do in 1980? We became more risk averse. You can understand that. Tragedies in childbirth were considered normal, natural, and acceptable because there was nothing anyone could do about them. But now they could. They had the bikini cut. They had more diagnostics. They had a fetal monitor. They had RhoGAM shot for Rh negative. All these things collided at the same time. And families chose to have safer cesareans if they felt their babies were at risk. In other words, cesareans were no longer just in case we as mothers were at risk. They were now performed in case our babies were at risk. So the cesarean rate, by the time I gave birth last in 1982, had more than doubled to 17%. And it's gone up since then. This is not because the medical profession has gone raging around with knives in their hands. This has to do with the marriage between consumers, the changes in global society, the changes in fashion, and the changes in our family size and how we view the preciousness of each child's life. And you would have done the same thing. Now, what else changed? Those skills-based methods were really targeting low-risk women. But 100% of pregnant women will give birth one way or another. Why shouldn't we all have skills? So birthing better families from the 70s, our skills are for all births, our births. The natural birth movement, which was just forming in the 60s and the 70s, wanted low-risk women to have a natural birth, pain-free labor, because Lamaze and Bradley advocated that. But Grantley Dick Reed wrote a book called Childbirth Without Fear and Pain-Free Labor. And people admired that and wanted that. And the goal was to give birth without pain, without fear, without medical care, without medical assessments, monitoring procedures. But not enough people who were choosing that achieved it. And by the way, that left out the majority of us who had risks that might become problems. But remember, those were accepted then, natural and normal. So the natural birth movement in the 80s became global. Everybody began talking about it. What was the role of midwives? What was the definition of a natural birth? And it turned out the definition of a natural birth was without those assessments, monitoring, and procedures, which were now labeled interventions. And you were told, I was told, that interventions are unnecessary and imposed on us. And that skills didn't matter because cows and cats weren't taught to birth. Women instinctively know how to birth. Birth will happen to 100% of us, one way or the other. And that we should have choices, which we lacked. And of course we wanted choices. But the choices were focused on saying no to interventions. And that has continued to today. You're facing your natural birth by trying to choose the birth you want and then hoping you get it. So our approach to you is to become skilled. Write a birth plan about choices and create a birth plan about the skills you're going to use. Now, as mentioned, Birthing Better Families in the 70s focused on breathing, communication, and touch. And in this email, you're going to get an ebook about the breathing. That's skill set 1. Skill set 2 developed in the 80s because we knew that the rise in cesareans had to do with those long, suffering labors. Nobody wanted them back then. Nobody wanted them now. It put everybody at risk. And so fathers were the ones who developed the skill set 2, the body skill set, which you're going to get in the next email, because men see birth from the outside. And I'm going to explain that in the next video.